Wee! Fight, 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 fight. We've got Kotaku and Jason Schreier versus Bioware. The salt is on full overload. You're going to want to sit in. You want to get your popcorn unsalted because there's going to be plenty in this video. Underhanded jabs, backhanded comments, everything we could love as lovers of the train wreck that is oftentimes AAA games. How was my Jim Sterling impression? So sometimes modern day storytelling likes to start at the end and go back to the beginning. And this is one of those cases where I think it tells the story the best. I woke up this morning to a tweet from Bioware. I follow Bioware, and I see kind of a weird tweet. Making games is especially a new IP will always be one of the hardest entertainment challenges. A message from our team regarding Anthem's development process. And I thought, okay, well, interesting. Now, I'm not here to dump on Anthem. Anthem has had its problems. At this point, out of respect for the Anthem community, I would just like Bioware to give them the loot they want, okay? It's that easy. Then you can grind away at adding actual endgame content and fixing the remaining many glitches. Now, most people are pretty patient, but if the gameplay experience is not rewarding, in this case when it comes to loot, they don't like it. So fix the loot, Bioware. But I digress. So the first sentence goes on to say, we'd like to take a moment to address an article published this morning about Bioware. I'm like, what? And Anthem's development. First and foremost, we wholeheartedly stand behind every current and former member of our team that worked on the game, including its leadership. It takes a massive amount of effort, energy, and dedication to make any game, and making Anthem would have not been possible without every single one of those efforts. We chose not to comment or participate in the story because we felt there was an unfair focus on specific team members and leaders who did their absolute best to bring a totally new idea to the fans. We didn't want to be part of something that was attempting to bring down them as individuals. We respect them all, and we built this game as a team. So right now I'm thinking, whoo boy, we got a Me Too situation in Bioware. We got some mad tea. Something is up. They go on to say, we put a great emphasis on the workplace culture in our studios. The health of well-being of the team members is something we take very seriously. We've built new leadership team over the last couple of years, starting with Casey Hudson as the GM, which helped us make big steps to improve studio culture and creative focus. We hear the criticisms that were raised by the people in the piece today, and we're looking at that alongside feedback that we received from our internal team surveys. We put a lot of focus on better planning to avoid crunch time, and that's not a major topic of our feedback from internal postmortems. Making games, especially new IPs, blah, blah, blah. As a studio and a team, we accept all criticisms that will come our way for the games we make, especially from our players. The creative process is often difficult. The struggles and challenges of making video games are very real, but rewarding, of putting something we created into the hands, blah, 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 blah. And you can read the full thing available on Bioware's main website. So then I thought, holy balls, this must be a doozy of an article. Took me a minute because they went out of their way to not mention it in the tweet or in their blog post, which I suppose they don't have to do. But it is a very long think piece by Jason Schreier. And this is going to be one of the situations. Now, oftentimes I'll say, hey, I'm going to link to an archive because I think this is hate baiting. This is the good side of Schreier. This is an excellent, excellent piece cataloging the entire creation of Anthem. Lots of interesting stuff. I'm only going to highlight a small portion of it because I think we've got to give credit when games journalists do good work, and Schreier's absolutely capable of it at times. So, stepping back, we now see an update. Minutes after the publication of this article, EA and Bioware put up a blog post in apparent response. We had sent over a bullet point and summary of what was in this piece, although they did not have a chance to read the article before publishing their post, which makes it particularly bizarre. The post explains a lack of comment for our article based on an assumption of what the article would focus on. We chose not to comment on participating in the story because we felt there was an unfair focus. We didn't want to be a part of that. Our article named some senior people at Bioware, and while we'd asked about the roles of various leaders at Bioware during the game's development, readers can judge for themselves whether Bioware's assumptions about our article were correct. We do not think they were. Quote, the struggles and challenges, we've seen that. People in the industry put in so much passion and energy, making something fun. We don't see the value in tearing other people down. We saw their post. Now we go to some shade. We believe in asking questions and publishing what we can find out. We hope that in the future, EA and Bioware will see the value of that process. Boom! Woohoo! That is well, maybe next time you'll reply to our email, zinger, by, I can only assume, the Schreier man himself. Then I thought, well, let's actually look at Schreier's response to their response. Now, I'm backing it all the way up to the nexus of all of this, which is the article itself. There will be particular things that Bioware took umbrage with, and we're going to take a look at some of the lowlights of the article. Now, we see Schreier. EA and Bioware declined to comment or provide any interviews for the story, but they did just put up this blog post written before they could even read the article. Very interesting, if somewhat dismissive. Hopefully they're serious about better planning. Bioware wrote and published this about my story before they even had a chance to read it, which is perhaps itself a testament to some of the problems that I highlighted this morning. Defensiveness, belief in Bioware magic. He goes on to say, quote, we don't see the value in tearing down one another's work. We don't believe in articles that do that are making our industry and craft better. Translation, get in the hive mind group think, and otherwise we don't care what you think. A company that has lost dozens of employees to burnout, stress, and depression over the past 2 years, hard to imagine. He finishes with, the more I read and think about Bioware's response, the more I am amazed on how cowardly it is. Written before they even read the article, attacking a journalist for reporting the truth about a company in crisis, it's almost hard to believe. Zing. Of course, then a quote from the article, people were so angry and sad all the time, they said another, depression and anxiety are an epidemic within Bioware. Co-signed by me, a person who left Bioware in 2017 with massive depression and anxiety that had taken me a while to get through and recover from. Now we get to the beginning. Did you like the my HBO special in storytelling, the video games industry is about to drop. So, I'm practicing storytelling. Now, this article is an absolute deluge of information, but I want to talk about some of the things Schreier talks about in terms of employee treatment, burnout, and things like that. Talking about how Frostbite was full of razor blades, all sorts of other information, how Anthem wasn't even supposed to be called Anthem, and much more. We're going to do some jumping around, but it wasn't even supposed to be called Anthem. Just days before the annual E3 convention in June of 2017, when storied studio Bioware would reveal its newest game, the plan had been to go with a different title, Beyond. They'd even printed out Beyond t-shirts. Then, less than a week before the LA press conference held by Bioware's parent company, EA word came down that securing the rights to the trademark would be too difficult. Beyond was ruled out. The leadership team quickly changed to their backup options, Anthem. But whereas Beyond had been indicative of what Bioware hoped the game would be, you'd go out beyond the walls of your fort and dangerous wilds around you, Anthem didn't really mean that much. Everybody was like, well, that doesn't make any sense. What does this have to do with anything? Said one person who worked on the game at the time. Just days before the game's announcement, the team at BioWare had a brand new name that nobody really understood. Now, I can attest to this as a marketing professional. There are many times that businesses come to me with even URLs that they want that are taken by something else, or names that are owned by some obscure trademark company that are just impossible to obtain, or the price is, it's cost prohibitive. So this does happen. Such a major last-minute upheaval might seem strange to an outside observer, but on Anthem it was common. Very few things went right in the development since it was first teased in 2012, but spent years floundering in pre-productions. Many features weren't finalized or implemented until the very final months, and to some who worked on the project, it wasn't even clear what kind of game Anthem even was. Zoinks. Fans have speculated endlessly as how Anthem went so awry. Was it originally a single-player role-playing game like BioWare's previous titles? Did EA force BioWare to make a Destiny clone? Did they strip out all the good missions to sell later as downloadable content? Is the loot system secretly driven by an elaborate AI system? Keep track of everything so that when you do it, you can spend more money on the game. The answer to all those questions is no. The account of Anthem's development, based on interviews with 19 people who either worked on the game or adjacent to it, is a story of indecision, mismanagement. It's a story of technical failings as EA's Frostbite engine continued to make life miserable for many of BioWare's developers, and understaffed departments struggled to serve their team's needs in a story of two studios, one in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, and the other in Austin, Texas, that grew resentful towards one another thanks to a tense, lopsided relationship. It's a story of a video game that was in development for nearly 7 years but didn't even enter production until the final 18 months, thanks to big narrative reboots, major design overhauls, and leadership team said to be unable to provide a consistent vision and unwilling to listen to feedback. Zoinks. Now, I want to look at some of the quotes from actual developers there. This reads a lot like what we saw come out of Activision and really Riot Games, every major studio kind of after a game, Rockstar Games. Let's look at some quotes. I actually cannot count the amount of stress casualties we had on Mass Effect Andromeda or Anthem, said a third former BioWare developer in an email. A stress casualty at BioWare means someone had such a mental breakdown from the stress that they were just gone for 1 to 3 months. Some come back, some don't. Among those who work or have worked for BioWare, there's a belief that something drastic needs to change. Many at the company now grumble about the successes of 2014's Dragon Age Inquisition was one of the worst things that could have happened to them. The third Dragon Age, which won Game of the Year in 2014 Game Awards, was a result of a brutal production process plagued by indecision, technical challenges. It was mostly built over the course of its final year, which led to a lengthy crunch hours and lots of exhaustion. Quote, some of the people in Edmonton were so burnt out, said one former BioWare developer. They were like, we needed Dragon Age Inquisition to fail in order for people to realize that it wasn't the right way to make games. Within the studio, there was a term called, quote, BioWare magic. It's a belief that no matter how rough a game's production might be, they will always come together in the final months. The game will always coalesce. It happened with Mass Effect Trilogy, it happened with Dragon Age Origins, and on Inquisition. Veteran BioWare developers like to refer to the production as a hockey stick. It's flat for a while, then suddenly jolts upwards. When I imagine that's pretty similar to what a lot of developers would say. Now, here's some more interesting quotes. As a result, the world would be lethal and full of dangerous creatures. Here at the bottom, we're talking about Anthem's planet. We can skip this part, I think. That's interesting for Anthem players. But BioWare veterans like to describe Casey Hudson's Mass Effect team as the Enterprise from Star Trek. They all did what the captain said. They were all laser focused on single destination. By comparison, they call Dragon Age team like a pirate ship. Now the Enterprise no longer has its Jean-Luc Picard. Still, members of Anthem team say they remained happy. Dragon Inquisition shipped at the end of 2014 to critical acclaim, and many of those developers moved over to Anthem, where they found a full team of high hopes and ambitious ideas. Quote, EA had these team health reports, they said. Anthem's morale was among the highest in all of EA. It was really, really good for a while. Everyone saw there was so much potential in these early prototypes. Potential. That was always the word there. Now, they go on. Let's move forward into the production a little bit about some people leaving. Grader leaving BioWare in 2016. As time passed, I didn't feel keen to play the game I was working on, he told me, which led to new writers for Anthem and a total story reboot. This led to even more chaos. As you can imagine, writing for Bioware sets the foundation for all of the games, said one developer. When a writer is unsure of what it's doing, it causes a lot of destruction to a lot of departments. I can imagine having large-scale narrative changes happen and really having to, you could change a few words on a sheet of paper, but you're talking about hundreds or thousands of hours of development to make it up. They never seem to settle on anything, added one person. They were always looking for something more, something new, said another. I think most people on the team felt like we didn't know exactly what the game was or what it was supposed to be because it kept changing. Keep in mind, one other developer said, everyone had hard decisions to make that were never done before. New IP, new genre, new technology, new style, everything was new. Now they go on to talk more about Frostbite. Frostbite, quote, Frostbite is full of razor blades, one former Bioware employee told me a few weeks ago, aptly summing up the feeling of perhaps hundreds of game developers who have worked at EA over the past few years. Frostbite is a video game engine or a suite of technology used to create a game. Created by EA, yes. Frostbite is like an in-house engine with all the problems that entails. It's poorly documented, hacked together, and so on, with all the problems of an externally sourced engine, said one former Bioware employee. Nobody you actually work with designed it, and you don't know why this thing works the way it does, why it's named the way it is. Part of the trouble was that you couldn't do enough in the engine to hack it to show it was possible, but then to get the investment behind it, to get the actual work done, took much longer. In some cases, you'd run into a brick wall, said a Bioware developer. Then you'd realize, oh God, we can only do this if we reinvent the wheel, which is going to take too long. It was sometimes so difficult to know when to cut and run. Now, there is a lot more inside this article. Now, of course, we know that mismanagement has happened in the Anthem launch and within EA, 6 years to develop this program. But the burnout, the depression, the poor management, then according to two people who were in the room, Patrick Soderlund was stunned. Sorry, we'll go back to the first quote. On one day in spring, Patrick Soderlund flew into Edmonton and made his way to the Bioware offices, entourage in tow. The Anthem team had completely overhauled art, re-added flying, which he had hoped would feel sufficiently impressive. But tensions were high in the wake of the last demo's disappointment and Mass Effect's Andromeda's high-profile failure. There was no way to know what might happen if Soderlund again disapproved of the demo. Would the project get canceled? Would Bioware be in trouble? One of our QA people had been playing it over and over again so they could get it to flow and the timing down perfectly, said one person who was involved. Within 30 seconds or so, the Exo jumps off and glides down the precipice and lands. Then, according to two people who were in the room, Patrick Soderlund was stunned. He turns around and goes, "That was effing awesome. Show it to me again." And then one person said he was like, "That was amazing. It's exactly what I wanted." So Soderlund was on board at one point, but it sounds like they're basically inventing as they go along. They were still finding the vision of the game, and the second I saw multiple presentations given to the entire studio trying to define what Anthem was even about. The Hollywood elevator pitch version of Anthem was, quote, "When we talk about Anthem, what we mean is X." When I saw many, many variations of that over the time, and that was indicative of how much conflict there was over trying to find a vision for this game and over how many people were struggling to have their vision come and which one won out. Zoinks. Anthem was on fire by October. BioWare had decided to make some massive changes. That summer, studio general manager Aaron Flynn departed to be replaced by returning Casey Hudson. As a part of the process, the studio canceled Joplin. Laidlaw quit shortly after. BioWare restarted Dragon Age 4 with a tiny team. Mark Durr was installed over the game director John Werner to become executive producer of Anthem. His role became so significant that he took top billing in Anthem's credits. Yikes. I mean, this whole article reads like BioWare was running around like chickens with their head cut off. I would say it ended up being quite stressful time, and a lot of people started to develop tunnel vision, one developer said. They had to finish their thing, and they don't have time. They don't have the time. That the developer added is one of the explanations for why one of Anthem's critical flaws. Consider it unreasonably long loading times, for example, which could take more than 2 minutes on PC in the early patch. Of course, we knew loading screens would be unpopular, developers said, but we have everything on a schedule, hundreds of days scheduled of work that we actually have. So loading is not going to get addressed. Quote, I don't know how accurate this is, said one developer, but I felt like the entire game was basically built in the last 6 to 9 months. You could play it. There was nothing there. It was just this crazy final rush. The hard part, how do you make the decision when there's no game? There's nothing to play. So yeah, you're going to keep questioning yourself. This whole article is interesting. I'm sure it's going to spawn many other articles. So pre-congratulations to Jason Schreier. I've already been talking way too long. And you look at quotes like, I think Anthem might be the kick in the butt that Bioware leadership needs to know how to develop games has changed dearly. I don't know. As long as development companies continue making money, I think poor leadership will continue to plague the industry. Poor leadership is what leads to burnout, leads to depression, leads to massive layoffs. And meanwhile, the suits at the very top laugh all the way to the bank. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you were informed. And if you were, please make sure to hit that like button on your way out, and we'll talk to you again real soon.